Are U.S. equities still attractive? Do U.S. equities look expensive? When we think about the U.S. equity markets, a lot of people just look at price to earnings ratio. And if you look at PE ratios relative to historical norms, we are at the higher end of valuation ranges. However, there's a lot of positive dynamics happening in the market right now. When we look at earnings growth, which is probably the most important thing when it comes to equity markets, we're beginning to see an earnings acceleration. And when we look at 2026, earnings estimates are calling for double-digit growth. There are other tailwinds to the U.S. equity markets also. For one, the Fed just began cutting interest rates. The second is we're beginning to see the stimulus come through for the One Big Beautiful Bill. When we look at 2026, we're also beginning to see small and mid-cap companies begin to outperform. Small and mid-cap companies were some of the laggards over the last couple of years, and when we look forward, it's possible that this subset of the market could grow earnings faster than other parts of the market. So while we understand that PE ratios are higher than historical averages, when we look at other metrics such as price to cash flow, it's really in a normalized level. The other thing to consider is when we look at the One Big Beautiful Bill, there is a huge benefit to cash flow and cash flow metrics. So while people try and make comparisons to the equity market relative to 1999, the last time we saw PE ratios at this level, we don't necessarily believe that that's the right comparison. Today's companies are more asset light, they have more predictable earnings stream, and also they're less levered. Also, when we look at the economic landscape, there are sectors such as manufacturing and housing that could benefit from lower interest rates, and that could be an additional driver of economic growth in 2026. What is the impact of rate cuts on the U.S. market? Recently, the Federal Reserve began cutting interest rates. A big reason for why they began cutting interest rates is when we think about economic growth for the last 3 years, it's really been driven by government spending, AI spending, and consumer spending. When we look at other sectors of the economy, such as manufacturing and housing, we've sort of been in a rolling recession. And what I mean by that is a lot of these sectors peaked out in growth in 2021 or 2022 and have been in a decline or going sideways since then. What the Federal Reserve is really trying to do by cutting interest rates is to stimulate these sectors. And when we think about the next leg of growth for the U.S. economy, the next leg of earnings growth, that really can come from the manufacturing sector and from the housing sector. So a large reason why the Federal Reserve began cutting rates was to stimulate these part of the economies that have been in a rolling recession since COVID. These rate cuts could stimulate the economy and drive even more earnings growth in 2026, thus supporting the equity market.